In a land torn by conflict, Arian returns to Eldoria amidst a heavy rain, a sign of the challenges to come. The nobles look at him with distrust, while the common people whisper stories of the lost prince, unsure of his purpose. A chance meeting with Lyra, his childhood friend now leading a rebellion, stirs old memories and tension. As she confronts him about the royal family's betrayal, Arian struggles with his identity, questioning if he is a true heir or just a ghost of a failed past. The rain poured down in Eldoria, heavy and relentless, as Arian stepped off the ship. Each drop felt like a warning, a grim reminder of the chaos that awaited him. The once familiar streets were now filled with tension, the air thick with unspoken words. He looked around, trying to find something resembling the home he remembered. Instead, he saw shadows of doubt in the eyes of the nobles, their whispers trailing behind him like ghosts of the past. "Is that really him?" one noble muttered, her gaze sharp as a dagger. "The lost prince? More like a ghost," another added, crossing his arms. "What can he do for us now?" Arian felt the weight of their stares, each one piercing through him. He remembered tales of his family, stories of honor and bravery. But now, as he stood there, he was just a figure cloaked in uncertainty. What did he represent to them? Hope, or just another failure? As he moved through the crowd, he heard murmurs from the commoners, curiosity mixed with skepticism. They whispered stories of a prince who vanished, leaving behind a kingdom in turmoil. "He abandoned us," one voice lamented. "What right does he have to return?" Suddenly, a familiar face broke through the sea of strangers. Lyra, his childhood friend, stood before him, her expression a mix of anger and relief. She had changed. Her once soft features were now hardened by struggle. "Arian," she said, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "You came back." "I had to," he replied, unsure how to explain the pull he felt towards his home. "I wanted to see—" "See what?" she interrupted, her eyes blazing. "See the ruins of a kingdom your family left to rot? Do you even understand what we've been through?" Her words stung, and Arian felt the truth of them. He had lived a life of comfort, while she had fought against the tides of despair. "I know it hasn't been easy," he said, searching for the right words. "But You know nothing," Lyra snapped, stepping closer, her voice low but fierce. "Your family betrayed us. They turned their backs on the people, and now you think you can just waltz back in and fix everything?" The tension between them crackled like the storm overhead. Memories of laughter and carefree days flooded Arian's mind, contrasting sharply with the reality they faced now. He had left, unaware of the brewing storm in Eldoria, and now he stood at the center of a conflict he did not fully understand. "I'm trying to find my place here," he admitted, his voice softer. "But I don't even know if I'm the rightful heir or just a relic of a past that failed us all." "Maybe you're both," Lyra replied, her tone softening just a fraction. "You have a choice to make, Arian. Will you stand with us, or will you side with the same family that abandoned its people?" Arian's heart raced. He felt the weight of his lineage pressing down on him. The expectations of a prince mixed with the reality of his kingdom's suffering. He looked into Lyra's eyes, searching for answers, but only finding more questions. "Help us," she urged, her voice now filled with a desperate hope. "Help us fight for what's right. You can't change the past, but you can shape the future." As the rain continued to fall, a sense of determination began to stir within him. Could he really be the one to change things? Could he bridge the gap between the nobility and the commoners? The storm outside mirrored the turmoil in his heart, and for the first time, Arian felt the stirrings of a warrior spirit awakening within him. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision. "I will do what I can," he said, his resolve growing stronger. "I'll find a way to unite us." Lyra nodded, a flicker of hope dancing in her eyes. The rain might be falling, but a fire was igniting, and together, They would face whatever storm lay ahead. As the rain began to ease, the sky above Eldoria turned a soft gray, still heavy with the remnants of the storm. Arian stood at the edge of the village he once called home, a place that felt both familiar and distant. Memories flooded his mind like the waters that had washed over the kingdom, and he felt the weight of his past pressing down on him. In his mind, he could hear the laughter of children, a sound filled with joy and innocence. He remembered Lyra, running through the fields, her hair dancing in the wind. They would chase each other, their laughter echoing in the air, free from worry. "Do you think we can change the world someday?" she had asked, her eyes sparkling with dreams. He shook his head as if trying to clear the fog of memory. The joyful days felt like a lifetime ago. Now, the world was different. Lyra was no longer just a friend. She was a leader of the rebellion, a voice for the oppressed. And he was a prince returned to a kingdom in turmoil, filled with conflict and uncertainty. Arian clenched his fists, guilt washing over him. "I left her to face this alone," he whispered to himself. He had spent years away, lost in a world of safety while she had fought against the storm that raged within Eldoria. Suddenly, he recalled Lyra's passionate speeches, the way her voice rose above the crowd, full of fire and determination. "The monarchy has failed us," she would shout, her words igniting a spark in the hearts of the people. "We deserve justice. We deserve a chance." Each time he heard her, he felt a mix of admiration and fear. Did he truly belong among them now? Could he stand beside her and fight for a cause that seemed so far from the life he had known? The tension between their worlds grew heavier in his chest. As he wandered through the village, he spotted Lyra in the distance, addressing a small group of villagers. She stood tall, her presence commanding. Arian's heart raced as he approached, unsure of how she would receive him after all this time. He could see the anger and hurt in her eyes, and it made him uneasy. "Lyra," he called out, hesitantly stepping forward. She turned, her expression shifting from surprise to caution. "Arian," she said, her voice steady but cold. "You've returned." "I had to," he replied, trying to keep his voice firm. "I want to help." "Help?" she echoed, crossing her arms. "You come back after years of hiding and you think you can just help? What do you even know about our struggles?" He felt the sting of her words, but he pressed on. "I know I've been away, but I've seen what happens in other lands. I want to learn. I want to understand." Lyra's gaze softened for a moment, but the fire of her anger was still there. "Understanding is not enough, Arian. We need action, not empty promises. You have a choice to make. Will you stand with us, or will you stand with the throne?" Arian's heart raced as he faced her challenge. I don't know," he admitted. "The throne is my blood, but I cannot ignore the cries of the people." "Then you must decide," she replied, her tone unwavering. "You can't be a part of both worlds. You will either fight for the people or be just another puppet of the crown." The weight of her words settled heavily on him. He felt torn between his royal lineage and the revolutionary ideals Lyra embodied. He had always been taught that a king should protect his people. But what if the monarchy was the very source of their suffering? As he continued to stand before her, the village buzzed with whispers around them, villagers watching with hope and skepticism. The world he used to know felt like a distant memory, and the reality of his absence began to haunt him. "Lyra," he said softly, "I know I cannot change the past, but I want to be a part of the future." A flicker of hope crossed her face, but it was quickly masked by doubt. "Then prove it. Show me that you can be more than just a prince. Show me that you can be a leader." Arian nodded, determination filling his heart. He would face the consequences of his absence. He would confront the expectations of his destiny. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could find a way to unite the two worlds he had come to know. The sun rose weakly over Eldoria, casting a dim light through the trees that surrounded the makeshift camp. The air was thick with tension as rival factions prepared for an unexpected confrontation. Arian stood at the edge of the clearing, feeling the weight of his royal blood heavy on his shoulders. He had lived in the shadows of his past for too long, but today, he would have to embrace the warrior within him. Suddenly, shouts erupted from the distance. Arian's heart raced as he turned to see a group of rebels clashing with royalist soldiers. The sound of clashing swords and the cries of men filled the air. He felt a surge of adrenaline course through him, awakening instincts he thought were buried deep. "Arian, we need you," a voice called out. It was Lyra, her face a mix of determination and fear as she fought off an attacker. Without thinking, Arian rushed into the fray, his body moving on instinct. He grabbed a sword that had fallen to the ground, its weight unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. As he joined the battle, Arian felt a fire ignite within him. He parried a blow aimed at Lyra and countered with a swift strike that sent the enemy reeling back. The chaos of the fight surrounded him, and for the first time since he returned, he felt alive. "Look at you, Arian! You actually know how to fight!" Lyra shouted, a hint of surprise in her voice as she spun to take down another foe. "I'm just trying to keep up with you," he replied, a smile breaking through the tension. But beneath the exhilaration, a sense of dread loomed. What kind of prince would he be if he had to rely on violence to prove himself? In the midst of the clash, something caught Arian's eye. Amidst the debris of battle, he saw a glimmering object half buried in the dirt. As he knelt to retrieve it, a strange energy pulsed through him. It was an ancient artifact, intricately carved with symbols he recognized from Eldoria's old tales. "Arian, focus!" Lyra's voice snapped him back to reality as she fought off another attacker. He placed the artifact in his pocket, feeling its weight settle against him, a reminder of a legacy he had yet to understand. As the battle raged on, Arian began to hear whispers among the fighters. "He's the lost prince, the descendant of the Dragon Kings." The words crashed over him like waves, and with each mention, the burden of his lineage grew heavier. He was not just Arian anymore, he was the last of a line that was meant to unite the kingdoms. "What are you thinking, Arian?" Lyra shouted as she ducked under a wild swing of a sword. "We need to get out of here." "I can't just run. I have to do something," he replied, determination flooding his voice. He had been absent for so long, and now faced with conflict, he felt the pressing need to reclaim his role. Lyra's eyes softened for a moment. "You need to understand what that role means. It's not just about being a prince. It's about being a leader for the people." But before he could respond, a loud crash echoed through the clearing. A figure emerged from the smoke, a towering man clad in armor that glinted in the dim light. He was a royalist captain, and his presence demanded authority. "Surrender now, or face the consequences," he bellowed, his voice booming like thunder. Arian's heart raced. The captain's words sent a shiver down his spine. Was he ready to face such a powerful foe? But then he thought of the people who had suffered, and the weight of their pain ignited a spark of courage within him. "I will not let you harm my people any longer," Arian shouted, stepping forward with newfound resolve. The captain laughed, a cruel sound that echoed through the chaos. "And what can you do, boy? You are nothing without your crown." In that moment, Arian felt the artifact pulse against his chest, and he realized it was time to embrace the legacy he had once fled from. "I may not wear a crown, but I have something more powerful. I have the will to fight for what is right." As he spoke, he felt a shift in the air, a sense of purpose washing over him. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. "Then let's show them what we can do together." With a nod, Arian raised his sword, ready to fight not just for himself, but for Eldoria and its people. In that moment, he understood that he was not just a prince, he was a warrior who would forge his own destiny. The battle was far from over, but Arian was ready to face it head-on, with Lyra by his side. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the ravaged landscape of Eldoria, Arian stood before a gathering of fierce faces. The air was thick with tension. Rebels and royalists alike filled the makeshift camp, their eyes fixed on him with a mix of hope and suspicion. He could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, a heavy mantle he was not sure he was ready to wear. "Listen, everyone," Arian began, his voice steady but firm. "We need to unite. If we keep fighting each other, we will lose everything. The kingdom is at stake." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Lyra stepped forward, her expression a blend of concern and defiance. "You think we can trust you, Arian? You've been gone too long. How do we know you won't betray us again?" Arian clenched his fists, feeling the sting of her words. "I know I have a lot to prove, but I am not the boy who ran away. I've seen the pain and the suffering. I want to help. I want to change things." "Change?" Lyra scoffed, crossing her arms. "You think words alone can change the hearts of those who have suffered? Power is not given. It is taken. You need to understand that." Arian took a deep breath, sensing the deep divide between them. "I understand more than you think. I am afraid of failing again. But if we do not stand together, we will all fall." The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, but something in Arian's voice reached the crowd. A few rebels nodded, their expressions softening. Lyra remained skeptical, but the truth in his eyes began to chip away at her doubt. "Fine," Lyra said, her tone reluctant. "If you think you can bring them together, then show us. But know this, I will not stand by and watch you play games with our lives." As the night deepened, Arian and Lyra devised a plan. They would call for a meeting with both factions. It was risky, but Arian believed it was the only way forward. He could feel a flicker of hope igniting within him. Days passed, and the day of the meeting arrived. Arian stood at the forefront, flanked by Lyra and a few trusted supporters. The air was charged with anticipation. Members from both sides gathered, their expressions wary but curious. "Thank you all for coming," Arian said, trying to project confidence despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. "Today, we stand at a crossroads. We can choose to fight and destroy each other, or we can unite to face the greater threat looming over us." A royalist shouted, "And why should we trust a prince who abandoned his people?" Lyra stepped forward, her voice strong. "Because he has returned. Because he is willing to listen. We cannot let old grudges blind us to the real enemy." The crowd erupted into heated arguments, voices clashing like swords. Arian felt his heart race as he scanned the faces around him. It was chaos, but he had to find a way to cut through it. "Enough!" Arian raised his voice, and silence fell over the crowd. "I know we have suffered. I know we have lost. But together, we can find strength. We can forge a new path. We owe it to those we have lost to try." Slowly, the anger in the crowd began to subside. Faces softened, and eyes filled with reluctant understanding. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. After the meeting, Arian and Lyra found themselves walking side by side. The night was quiet, the tension in the air replaced by a fragile sense of hope. "You did well today," Lyra admitted, her tone softer than before. "I still have my doubts, but you are trying." "I can't do this without you," Arian replied, his voice sincere. "I need your strength, your passion. Together, we can make a difference." In that moment, a deeper bond formed between them, built on shared fears and common goals. They were no longer just a prince and a rebel leader. They were allies, united by a hope for a better future. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the distance. Shouts filled the air as a band of rebels rushed into the camp, breathless and wide-eyed. "They've taken our friends. We need to rescue them now." Arian's heart raced. This was their chance to prove themselves. "Gather everyone!" he shouted. "We will launch a raid to rescue them, together." As the rebels rallied around him, he felt the weight of leadership settle more comfortably on his shoulders. This was just the beginning, and he was ready to fight for the future of Eldoria. As Arian and Lyra set out on their quest to awaken the dragons, the air was thick with anticipation. The path ahead was not just a journey through Eldoria's wild landscapes, but also a journey through their hearts. The mountains loomed high, shrouded in mist, while the forest whispered ancient secrets. They knew the way would be treacherous, filled with mythical creatures that guarded the secrets of old. "I hope you are ready for this," Arian said, glancing at Lyra, who walked with a determined stride. "We have no idea what we might face." "I've faced worse than mythical beasts," she replied, her voice steady. "This is about more than just dragons. We need their power to fight for our people." As they climbed a steep incline, Arian felt the weight of leadership on his shoulders. The responsibility to protect his people and awaken the dragons pressed down on him. "What if I fail?" he asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "What if we cannot awaken them?" Lyra paused, turning to him. "You will not fail, Arian. You carry the blood of a warrior. You just need to believe in yourself." Her eyes sparkled with a mix of confidence and concern, and Arian felt a flicker of hope. They continued on, sharing stories from their past. With every step, the bond between them deepened. "Do you remember the time we tried to catch fireflies by the river?" Arian chuckled, recalling a memory that felt like a lifetime ago. "You were so sure you could catch them with that old net." Lyra laughed, her voice light and airy. "I still think I could have if you had not scared them away. You always were the loud one." "Maybe I was just trying to impress you," he replied, a playful grin spreading across his face. The laughter brought a moment of levity, breaking the tension that surrounded their mission. As they reached a clearing, Lyra suddenly halted. "Look!" she exclaimed, pointing ahead. A massive dragon's lair opened up before them, its entrance framed by jagged rocks and vines. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying all at once. "Do you think?" Arian began, but Lyra interrupted him. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We need to stay cautious." They approached the lair, hearts pounding in their chests. As they neared, a low growl echoed from within. Arian's pulse quickened. "What do we do now?" he asked, glancing nervously at Lyra. "Let me handle this," she said, stepping forward. "I've read about dragons. They respond to respect." She took a deep breath and called out, "Great guardian of the skies, we seek your wisdom and power." For a moment, silence enveloped them. Then, from the shadows, a magnificent dragon emerged. Its scales shimmered like jewels, and its eyes glowed with ancient knowledge. "What brings you to my lair, little ones?" the dragon rumbled, its voice echoing like thunder. Arian felt a mix of awe and fear. "We are here to awaken the dragons of Eldoria," he said, finding his courage. "Our land is in danger, and we need your strength to unite the people against the darkness." The dragon studied them closely, its gaze piercing through their souls. "And what makes you worthy of such power?" it asked, its tone challenging. Lyra stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "We fight not for ourselves, but for those who cannot fight. The people of Eldoria are suffering, and we wish to restore hope." The dragon seemed to ponder her words. "Hope is a powerful force," it said finally, "but it must be earned, not given." Arian felt the burden of leadership again, and he knew the weight of their quest was greater than he had imagined. "What must we do?" he asked earnestly. "Prove your worthiness," the dragon replied, a hint of a smile in its eyes. "Face the trials of the heart and spirit within these walls. Only then will the dragons rise again." With those words, the dragon stepped back, opening the way into the lair. Arian and Lyra exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and trepidation swirling between them. They knew that this would be the moment that tested everything they had learned about themselves and each other. "Are you ready for this?" Arian asked, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. "With you by my side, I am ready for anything," Lyra replied, her strength giving him hope. Together, they stepped into the dragon's lair, ready to face the trials that awaited them. The skies over Eldoria darkened as the final battle approached. Arian stood on a hill, overlooking the gathering forces. The air crackled with tension, and the distant roars of dragons echoed in the valley below. He could feel the weight of his people's hopes resting on his shoulders, and with it came a surge of determination. "Are you ready for this, Arian?" Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, her eyes fierce with resolve. "I must be," he replied, trying to sound confident. "If we fail today, everything we fought for will be lost." Lyra nodded, her expression softening for a moment. "You're not alone in this. We are all here for you." As they descended the hill, Arian looked at the gathered warriors. Men and women from both the royalist and rebel factions stood side by side, united by a common cause. The sight filled him with hope. He raised his voice to address them. "People of Eldoria, today we fight not just for ourselves, but for the future of our land. We face an ancient alliance that seeks to divide us, but together we are stronger." A cheer rose from the crowd, echoing his words. Arian felt the energy of the moment surge through him. With a final nod to Lyra, he signaled for the dragons to enter the fray. The great beasts soared overhead, filling the sky with their mighty wings. As the battle commenced, Arian found himself in the thick of it. Clashes of steel and the cries of warriors surrounded him. He fought fiercely, remembering Lyra's words about understanding and empathy. He didn't want to be a ruler who ruled through fear. He wanted to be a leader who inspired hope. In the chaos, he spotted the leader of the rival factions, a tall man with piercing eyes and a reputation for brutality. The man was rallying his troops, instilling fear among the ranks. Arian's heart raced as he approached, determined to confront him. "Enough of this!" Arian shouted, raising his sword. "This fighting will lead us to ruin. We can find peace if we work together." The rival leader laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the noise of battle. "You think you can change the hearts of men with words? You are a fool, Arian." "Am I?" Arian replied, his voice steady. "Look around you. The people are tired of bloodshed. They want a future where they can live in peace." For a moment, the rival leader hesitated, the glint of uncertainty in his eyes. Arian seized the moment, stepping closer. "You have the power to change this. We can unite our forces and create a new Eldoria together." Just then, a dragon swooped down, roaring with power. The rival leader's gaze shifted, fear flashing across his face. Arian pressed on, sensing he was getting through. Leadership is not about dominance. It is about understanding. It is about putting the needs of the people first, Arian said, his voice rising above the din of battle. The rival leader's grip on his sword loosened. You truly believe that?" "I do," Arian replied, feeling a flicker of hope. "Join us, and let's end this together." In that moment, the rival leader's resolve crumbled. He lowered his weapon, the fire in his eyes dimming. "Very well, Arian. Let's end this fight." With the rival leader's surrender, a wave of relief washed over Arian. The battle began to shift as both sides lowered their weapons, realizing that unity was stronger than division. The dragons roared in triumph, circling above as the warriors put down their swords. As the dust settled, Arian and Lyra found each other in the fray. They stood together, surveying the aftermath of the battle. "We did it," Lyra whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We united them." Arian smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "But this is just the beginning. We must listen to the people and heal the wounds of the past." Lyra nodded, her expression serious. True leadership lies in understanding and compassion. Together, we can create a better Eldoria. As they looked out over the gathered people, Arian felt a sense of purpose solidify within him. He was no longer just a prince. He was a leader, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. Together, with Lyra by his side, they would build a future where all voices were heard and valued. Share this story if you believe that unity and understanding can conquer even the fiercest battles. Leave a comment on how compassion has transformed your life and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales like this one.